Knight goes back, and now I guess it's time to reap the rewards of your hard work. Do you take the pawn on b7? Gukesh says, not so soon. I am happy to be waiting. He's pinned this pawn on f5. He wants to go g4 and knight g3. That's his idea. Knight comes to f6, and now the bishop is attacked. Do we go g4? That looks so tempting, you know, that's such a tempting move, just to play your pawn to g4. No, he first chops off the pawn on b7. If you look at the material now, white has 2 pawns and a bishop for a rook. That's already good enough material. Queen comes up to d7. And now Gukesh needs to find his next plan here. He goes g4, great move. The pawn is pinned. He goes rook e7. King g7 would have been much better, but rook e7, the idea is to win this bishop because it is attacked now 3 times. He goes bishop c6, great move, because now the rook is hanging. So if you are careless and you take here, I can first take on f5 and then take on b8. So he takes on b5, pawn takes on b5, and now f5 is anyway soft. The queen is attacking here, the knight is coming in, so he goes queen e6 and the knight jumps to g3, attacking f5. King goes back, and it's time to now take the pawn on f5. Gukesh will be then 3 pawns and a bishop for a rook. That's a lot of material there, which is already winning position. You can see Ding, he knows the writing is on the wall, he's going to lose this. But what a game by Gukesh, right? He's just played this so smoothly. He's not given Ding any chance. He's not been in any hurry to prove his compensation for the material loss. Queen goes to b4, attacking the pawn on d6. Also, queen can jump to a5. He goes d5, queen a5, attacking the rook. The rook cannot be defended. There's hardly any move. a7 is falling. It's time to call it a day. Ding Liren is thinking for his move. He's already done. He has 7 minutes on the clock, but that's not enough. He resigns. Gukesh beats another world champion on the same day after beating Magnus Carlsen in round 2. Levon Aronian in round 3. He gets the better of Ding Liren. What a victory this was for Gukesh, because it was very smooth and flawless. Ding gets up from the chair. It has been a tough day for him, but Gukesh, he's now in the 2nd spot in this tournament for the rapid playoffs that will determine who will go to the classical for what pairing. As always, Gukesh pays his respect to the board, gets up, and now move the rook. Like, let's say if you're going to go rook a2 to stop this knight from coming, there'll be knight c3. He pushes his pawn to c7. Gukesh says, my pawn is now 1 square away from queening. Knight b2 played. Is the knight escaping? The knight can now go to d3. Later, c4 could be an option, but the knight on e5 is such a monster. Rook a2 played. Fantastic move here. The point is, if you play knight d3 now, I can make a queen and then take your knight. That's the point, and that's why Gukesh takes the queen in his hand. Gukesh says, if you play knight d3, Magnus, I'm going to make a queen. So Magnus has to go back there. Rook c2, trying to queen. Magnus puts his bishop back. But guys, now this knight is without any oxygen support. It's living his last few breaths. It needs something, some way to escape. But how? It's not possible. The knight's escape routes are completely taken away by the white pieces. Knight d3, fantastic move played by Gukesh. Now, king takes d1 is not yet a threat because rook takes d3 would be hanging. So Magnus brings his king up the board. But now rook c1, that's what his plan was. He wants to take this knight with his rook, and the knight is completely trapped. e5 played. e5 has been played in the position. Now the threat is if you take here, he wants to go e4 and fork these knights. Magnus is so tricky. He's not letting Gukesh win, and also Gukesh has little time on the clock. He needs to figure out everything here, which is not easy against a player like Magnus. He takes with the knight, knight b2, so that if you take here, he wants to take with the king, he wants to take with the rook with a check, and that's his point. He's deflecting one of the knights there with knight b2. Best move now is rook f1. Gukesh finds it. Rook f1 check is an excellent move. Now the king has to move. King e7 played. Again, important not to take on b2. e5 is hanging, so first give a check. Exactly, you give a check. If king d7 here played, then you go rook f7. If king takes c6, there's knight b4 with a fork. And so Magnus goes king d6 here, but check. King takes pawn, and now you will see the rook is actually defending the knight. So the knight is taken, and Gukesh is a piece up. Whoa! What amazing play here by Gukesh. He somehow managed to trick Magnus Carlsen and get an extra piece. You can see Magnus is unhappy. There are still some drawing chances with very few pawns left on the board. Bishop b7. Magnus was down to a second. His bishop fell. He had to press the clock instantly, and he apologizes to his opponent. Gukesh plays knight to b4. Just being very, very safe and sure that this is the right move. Magnus moves his rook away. But these two knights are monstrous along with the rook. And the king is also well placed. So Gukesh is winning. He brings his knight in. Look at how these knights control 1, 2, 3, 4 squares. Rook comes in comes a check. King has to go back. And now, how does Gukesh finish off this game? He goes knight d6. He's attacking the bishop. The bishop is played on h1. Magnus is, of course, not so happy with his position. It's almost over. The game is coming to an end. These two knights and the rook have to weave a mating attack. That's exactly what they have to do. Knight a6 check, king a8, and Gukesh finds knight b5, threatening a checkmate here. Magnus resigns. Gukesh has